Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror film, Locusts, the Eighth Plague. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. A huge chemical truck is heading towards a research facility outside the town. Inside the facility, there is a dome where an insect population thrives around the cornfield. The researchers, named Mr. Black and Mr. Brown, walk into the command center. They then order the system operator to release the genetically modified locusts towards the dome. The locusts are designed to consume insects while keeping the crops untouched. They plan to sell the modified locusts to the farmers once their experiment succeeds. They then release the locusts out of the pen for the experiment. In a short amount of time, the locusts swarm towards the dome. Shortly after, they lure the locusts back to the pen, using the green chemical. As they scan the dome, it reveals that their experiment is successful, since there are no insects left, while there is no damage done to the cornfield. They celebrate, but it is short-lived since the system malfunctions, and the locusts are nowhere to be found. A worker then goes to manually close the vent to prevent the locusts from escaping. Suddenly, the locusts swarm towards the open vent. The locusts then pierce through the worker's body, revealing its smelly organs. The researchers release a sigh of disappointment as the locusts escape the facility. Meanwhile, the farmer's son rides his dirt bike to get some apples from the field. Also, Mr. Muscles, a scientist who owns an organic pesticide business, comes to ask the farmer for the payment for the pesticide spray. The farmer complains about the pesticide price, but the farmer still agrees to pay as Mr. Muscles explains that organic pesticide production is costly. The farmer's wife then says she will give the check to him. After that, Mr. Muscles heads back home where his wife, Beauty, awaits him. Beauty burns their dinner, but they are still happy, as the organic pesticide formula they created successfully works. They then do a tongue massage moment to celebrate. Back to the research center, Mr. Black, with the workers, investigates what happens in the vent. They then find the remains of the worker's body eaten by the locusts earlier. Mr. Black immediately comes back to the office, declaring that they have a big problem, while he hands the worker's smelly foot to Mr. Brown. Mr. Black says they need to inform the government that the locusts escaped from the facility, but Mr. Brown only thinks about the profit that awaits them. Mr. Brown insists that the government might suspend the facility once it knows about their research. Mr. Brown then assures Mr. Black that everything will be fine, since the locusts are designed to have a short lifespan, so they will naturally die after a few days. In the meantime, the farmer is harvesting the corn through his harvester. Suddenly, the harvester malfunctions as if something jammed it. The farmer then reports it to his wife. As he goes out to check it, he sees a bloody corpse of an animal that seems to be eaten to the bones. Meanwhile, the wife finds the smelly corpse of their son, which also appears to be eaten by something strange. As the father returns to the harvester, he finds it covered by the locusts. Suddenly, the locusts swarm towards him and eat him to death. The locusts also kill the wife who runs towards there. Shortly after, Mr. Muscles arrives along the cornfield, where he finds a dead locust. As he walks further, he finds the farmer's lacerated corpse. He then heads to the town hospital, where Beauty happens to work. He then reports to her what he finds in the cornfield. It turns out that Beauty also receives a report about the mutilated body of a cow. They then go to the lab to inspect it. Mr. Muscles finds a dead locust inside the cow's body. In their knowledge, locusts would not eat cow's flesh since it is a herbivore. But when they check it on the microscope, they find flesh inside its stomach, confirming that it eats the cow. Apparently, Mr. Muscles is aware of the research facility, which he suspects is the source of the locusts. It also turns out that Mr. Black is Beauty's father. Meanwhile, a family enjoys their peaceful moment at the park near the town. The son comes to play at a cave, where the swarm of locusts suddenly chases him. He then runs towards his parents while telling them to run away. The mother brings him to the car while the locusts swarm on the father. Mother comes to help the father, but she also becomes helpless when the locusts attack her. In the end, they both die as the locusts come to feast on their flesh, while the son survives in the car. He tries to drive away, but he accidentally crashes the car into the trees. At the research facility, Mr. Muscles furiously comes inside Mr. Black's office to tell him about the crisis caused by their experiment. He then tells Mr. Black that they need to contain the locust before it kills more people. But Mr. Black only cares about their research company. So he informs Mr. Brown that Mr. Muscles knows about their research. Mr. Brown then orders him to cover up their actions. At the park, an officer passes by and finds the traumatized son inside the crashed car. He then brings the son to his police car. As he is about to drive away, the locusts suddenly swarm his car. But he quickly drives away and manages to escape from there. He then brings the son to the hospital. Meanwhile, the government sends an agent called Agent Bald to the town to handle the locust infestation. Apparently, Agent Bald is an expert who successfully contained a locust infestation in Africa. Along the highway, Mr. Muscles stops at a payphone to call Beauty. He informs her that Mr. Black is responsible for the locust infestation, but she feels relief as he informs her that Mr. Black designed the locust to die in 2 days. Later, Mr. Muscles arrives at the hospital to talk with Beauty. As they are both looking to map out the swarm path, they receive a report of the locust attack on a family at the park. They then head towards the hospital morgue, where the hospital staff reveals the mutilated bodies of the parents. Shortly after, they walk upstairs to check on the son, but the son appears to be extremely traumatized. Mr. Muscles goes outside to talk with the officer who rescues the son. He takes a sample locust from the officer's car and abruptly leaves. He then examines the locust at the lab, where he finds out that it is from a new generation locust. This means that the locusts have mutated into having the capacity to reproduce. So, he quickly informs Beauty about it, since the reproduction of the locust greatly worsens their predicament. Later at the runway, the helicopters that bring the response team led by Agent Bald finally arrive. Mr. Muscles and Beauty come to welcome them. Along the way, Mr. Muscles suggests to the team that they need to find locust breeding grounds to stop them from reproducing. So, at the hospital, they map out the possible location of the locusts. They suspect that it is located in the cave. Meanwhile, 2 men on a dirt bike drive near the cave. The locust swarm suddenly appears and attacks one of them. As one of them falls out of his bike, the locust swarm to his body. At the lake, Mr. Muscles is peacefully contemplating, while Beauty comes to give him a hormone massage. It turns out that he is thinking about his efforts to inform people about the consequences of their actions against nature. The following day, Mr. Muscles and Beauty, with a response team led by Agent Bald, come to survey the cave. They look up at the cave, where they find a swarm of locusts. As they walk further, they finally see the sticky breeding ground of the locusts. Mr. Muscles then proceeds to take a filthy sample from the cave wall. Before leaving, the response team sprays pesticide to the breeding ground to eradicate it. However, it seems that the locusts are immune to it. So Agent Bald orders the response team to burn it with the flamethrower. However, this further agitates the swarm of locusts that attack them. They quickly run outside, but the locusts still follow them. The response team uses their flamethrower to burn the locusts. But the locusts destroy their flamethrower, setting it on fire, so they get burned to death by the flamethrower instead. As the swarm of locusts leaves, everyone in the response team dies. At the same time, Beauty, Mr. Muscles, and Agent Bald miraculously manage to survive. As the situation seems to worsen, Agent Bald receives a call from the Washington official who authorizes him to use a military-grade pesticide called UD66. At the hospital, they look at a computer simulation that projects the progress of the locust infestation. It turns out that in 96 hours, the locust infestation would be large enough to fill the whole town. So Agent Bald decides to call the National Guard to release the military-grade pesticide to fight the locusts. However, Mr. Muscles disagrees with him. Since the pesticide is extremely toxic, it will have a massive effect on other biological life. At this moment, Beauty sides with Agent Bald due to the situation's urgency. She then decides to sign the approval to release the pesticide. Meanwhile, at the amusement park, the people are happily enjoying the rides. Suddenly, the locusts swarm towards there. As the locusts arrive, it proceeds on eating people's faces. The trapped people then don't have a choice but to scream in agony, while people on the ground freely run out of there. As the news about the attack reaches the hospital, Beauty, Mr. Muscles, and Agent Bald start figuring out a way to slow down the progress of the infestation to avoid another casualty. Agent Bald suggests putting livestock in the middle of a field to lure the hungry locusts. When the locusts come to feed on the livestock, the military would spray the military-grade pesticide to exterminate the locusts. But Mr. Muscles keeps warning them about the irreversible consequence of spraying the pesticide. This forces Agent Bald to decide on using a lower dose of the military pesticide, called UD45. Later, the military proceeds to conduct the operation of Agent Bald's plan. They put livestock in the middle of a field, while a helicopter prepares to spray the pesticide. Meanwhile, at the lab, Mr. Muscles figures out that the locusts are resistant to the military pesticide. To make things worse, the pesticide attracts the locusts and makes the locust stronger. He then quickly drives towards the field. Along the way, he calls Beauty, telling her to stop the operation since it is dangerous. In the field, the locust swarm begins eating the livestock while the helicopter is heading towards there to spray the pesticide. Beauty quickly orders Agent Bald to stop the operation. He then quickly tells the pilot to abort. Unfortunately, the locust swarm distorts the transmission of the signal, so his radio cannot reach the pilot's radio. The helicopter then sprays the pesticide, making the locust swarm towards it. The locusts pierce through the body of the pilots, leading to their bloody death. Shortly after, the helicopter begins swirling in the air until it crashes to the ground and explodes. Meanwhile, the Washington official projected that the locust infestation would reach a populated part of the town in a few hours, so he sends the National Guard to the town to help fight the locusts. Shortly after, the National Guard, composed of military men with tanks, arrives. They then set up a line of defense against the locust, while also evacuating the people out of there. Soon after, the locust swarm arrives there. The military uses its powerful weapons to fight back, but the locusts seem to be unaffected. The locusts then start feeding on their ugly faces, while they desperately scream in agony. At the hospital, Mr. Muscles realizes that the locusts did not attack him in Beauty, since they both consume only organic food. He then figures out that the locusts are allergic to something organic, while being attracted to things with chemicals. So, he suggests to Mr. Bald that he already knows the solution to their problem. He then heads towards the field to fill the agricultural aircraft with the organic pesticide they formulated for their business. He flies the plane and sprays the pesticide across the town, instantly killing the locusts. Thinking that he completely eradicates the locusts, he joyfully declares on the radio that the locusts are dead. At the same time, Beauty and Agent Bald celebrate at the hospital. But it turns out the locust infestation is not solved yet. As they walk outside, they see another locust swarm coming. This time, Mr. Muscles cannot fight it, since he already used all of the organic pesticides earlier. Beauty then decides to ask Mr. Black the solution for the locust infestation, since he is the designer of its genetics. Just as they arrive at the research facility, Mr. Brown quickly escapes, avoiding responsibility for the damage created by their experiment. As Mr. Brown drives along the highway, he comes across the locust swarm, which quickly pierces through the car. The locusts then proceed to attack him, while he desperately fights back. Meanwhile, Mr. Black shares the solution with them. Apparently, they just need the green chemical to lure the locust swarm towards the research dome. When they manage to hold him at the dome, they would blow it up to exterminate the locusts. Mr. Muscles then fills the aircraft with the green chemicals. He flies the aircraft, spraying the green chemical across the sky to attract the locust swarm. In the end, he successfully brings the locust swarm inside the dome. The dome then instantly traps the locusts there. However, the locusts interfere with the signal of the bomb detonator. Mr. Black then owns up to his mistakes and decides to go inside the dome to manually detonate the bomb. Inside, he activates the timer that will detonate the bomb. He has 30 seconds to come out, but the locusts attack him, preventing him from escaping out of there while the bomb timer ticks. Suddenly, the timer stops when there are a few seconds left. At this moment, he chooses to sacrifice himself by pushing the button that will continue the timer. The bomb blows up the dome in a few seconds, leading to his death. At the same time, the explosion successfully exterminates the locusts. Outside, Beauty is tearful as she witnesses her father's death. She runs towards Mr. Muscles, asking for his muscle comfort in the middle of the meadows. As they reunite, they emotionally hug each other. They both declare with a feeling of relief that the locust infestation is over. In the ending scene, a truck delivers a live specimen of the genetically modified locusts to the other town. This is Daniel CC Moody Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.